Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host, Dan, and on the internet is Too Sweet MTG. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, James. How's it going, dude?
Yeah, it's going good. It's going good.
Marvelous. We're back. Okay, first off, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that this is, in fact, another set review after the last episode where we said we're going to be doing a regular episode next. Basically, timings and holidays have meant we need to push this up a little bit, but we have some awesome episodes planned in the future, so do make sure you follow the podcast. Before we jump into our Bloomburrow set review, just a little bit of news we wanted to talk about. James, tell us a little bit about the Vintage Cube Live thing that's going on right now, because it does sound pretty cool.
Yeah, this is sick. We don't normally do news on our set reviews, but I was too excited about this, so I made Dan as a segment for it. So this is a new tournament series that is being run by Ultimate Guard in collaboration with Daybreak Games, the guys who run Magic Online. So basically, it's a tournament series mostly run on Magic Online, but the prize pool for this qualifies you for a in-person 8-player vintage cube draft that will be run at MagicCon Las Vegas. But you get to draft this vintage cube for keeps. If you open a Black Lotus, you get to keep the Black Lotus, assuming you take the Black Lotus. You should take the Black Lotus in this spot. You open an Ancestral, you're walking away with an Ancestral. I feel like if someone had designed a tournament series to get me to give them my money, this is what they would have built. I'm pretty excited for this. It's obviously hard to get there, and the demand is pretty high, as you can imagine. There's a so you've got if you 3-0 a feeder league, you get to enter a 64-player draft. You win that, you go to a 8-player draft, which you need to 3-0 to get to Vegas. So not easy to get there, but what a payoff. Drafting Vintage Cube for keeps. And the prize pool of that draft is so it's obviously you're drafting a 540 card powered cube. The prize pool will be whichever 180 cards were not drafted in the draft are going to be the prize pool for winning the draft. This is sick. I'm psyched about it. Also, congratulations to Fire Truck, friend of the show, for taking down his first 64-player draft.
I saw a message last night of him saying, I've just started drafting as we went to bed and then woke up. But I think his last message was like 6:30 a.m. our time or something like that.
Yeah, there's 2 drafts. I will say the only issue I have with this tournament series is that the timings are not currently reasonable for if you have a job that you need to wake up for in the morning. I really hope they fix that because I'm very excited to do some of these 64-player drafts. I've got my entries, but I need them to put them at times where I don't have to skip days of work in order to draft.
Yeah, it does sound sick. Yeah, looking forward to that. Good luck for yourself, James, and yeah, good luck to Firetrack. Hope you guys bring home. I want you both there. Come on, representing the UK. Love that for us.
Oh yeah, for sure. Got to represent the podcast. If you want to get a Magic Online account, Dan, now is the time.
That is a very easy way for me to just give other people my money, James. As much as I love Powered Cube. Yeah,
that's fair.
All right, awesome. So today, as we mentioned, is our Cube set review for Bloomburrow. So let's chat a little bit about Bloomburrow and the set as itself before we jump into the set review. First thing to mention is that as a set, this has a lot of creature type matters cards in it. There's a lot of cards that care about having a certain creature type in play. And because of that, this is a bit more of a unique set because we've had kind of these kind of typal matters, creature type matters sets in the past. But normally they revolve around things like elves and goblins and humans that you see in a lot of cubes. The creature types this set is revolving around is things like squirrels and frogs. So kind of like the pure creature type matters cards in this set. We're not going to be touching as much because generally they won't see much play in a wider range of cubes, just because lizard creature type matters isn't really there yet, basically.
Yeah, for sure. But Magic as a game has focused a lot more around elves and goblins than squirrels and badgers.
We'll see how well this set does. You never know. On Horizons 3 might just be badger type matters.
Badger's about to become a staple, I think. Yeah.
That does nicely bring us on to how we're going to be evaluating the cards and what we're going to be talking about today. So first and foremost, with all of our set reviews, we are comparing every card in this set to every card that has ever been printed before it. So if we don't mention a card, that doesn't mean it's bad and that you shouldn't run it in your own particular cube. It just means that we don't think it's going to find a place in the majority of cubes out there. In terms of those cubes, it's probably worth us breaking down how we're going to be talking about the cards and, importantly, the types of cubes out there. When we talk about how cards go into cubes, we're generally talking about cubes in terms of things like power level, restriction, and size. For power level, we're basically trying to describe the pool of cards the rest of the cube is picked from. So an entry-level cube we often describe as low-powered or budget. There's a lot of cool cards that you might run, but generally they're looking for fun games rather than doing broken things really, really quickly. Think of these somewhere in power level between a regular set draft and a master's set. You then have your kind of mid-powered cubes. The games are getting a little faster, there's better fixing, you start seeing more staple cards from other formats. So you see things like Lightning Bolt and Counterspell and maybe some fetch lands. Previously, these might have also been known as standard, modern, or legacy cubes. You then have the real high-powered cubes. They're generally the environments that are optimized to run the best cards possible. The games are powerful and the decks need to be more focused. Also in the decks, you have to be doing a thing. In terms of speed, if you go for 3 turns in a row, you've probably lost the game. Like the best example of a high-powered level cube is something like the Mitgo or the Modo Vintage Cube. When it comes to restrictions, the most popular are things like Pauper, which is a cube using only commons, and you have Peasant, which is a cube that only uses uncommons. There are others out there, but they don't really have an effect on our set review. In terms of size, the general idea is that with smaller cubes, the average card quality is higher, like in a 360 cube, for example. Whereas with larger cubes, like a 540 or 720, there is room for less optimal cards, and you're often looking for duplicates of effects. So if we say a card could see play in a 720 cube, it probably means that there are cards that do something similar that already might see cube play, but you can run this in a larger cube where there is more room, or you might want an extra version of that effect.
Yeah, for sure. And often I think the differences we see when we talk about this card is good, but for a lower powered level cube. Low power level cubes, to be fair, they're still doing powerful things. They just tend to happen often a little bit later in the game, and you have a bit more time to set up for them. So things like a powerful 5-mana creature often struggles in something like Powered Vintage Cube, just because, well, they might source power shares it and you're way behind on mana, or they might have run you over already. Whereas in a slightly lower power level cube, it just means you get a little bit more time to set up, and you can deal with playing some slightly less efficient cards.
Okay, so with that out of the way, James, do you want to take it away with our first card of the day?
Sure. So starting off in white, we have Baza the Bounding Spring. This is 2 white for a 4/5 legendary creature elemental elk. Says when Baza the Bounding Spring enters, create a treasure token if an opponent controls more lands than you. You gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. And you create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. And finally, you draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. And this is kind of like a big and more powerful timely reinforcements. It's it's a really nice way to stabilize when you're behind. You're probably not going to be triggering all of these most of the time, because if you're building your deck in a way where you're behind on life, cards, creatures, and lands, then you're probably just building a deck that's losing most of the time.
Yeah, there are other issues.
yeah. But I don't think you need to get all of them for this card to be pretty good. I'd say this is probably at its best in like a controlling white deck. So probably like a blue-white X control, I think, is the natural home. Because in that deck, you're mostly going to have fewer creatures than your opponent. And then if you're just getting the creature thing, it's it's 6 power over 3 bodies for 4 mana. That's already a pretty good start. You'll be behind on life a lot of the time because you're not pressuring your opponent's life totals. That's coming with 2 life. You're already at the point of having a really good stabilizing creature. I wouldn't want to play this so much in a white aggressive deck, because in that deck, you're hoping to have more creatures, more life. So you're probably trying to just get the card, and 4 mana, 4/5 cantrip creature, whilst solid is there are better 4-drops available, and sometimes you won't even get the card, right? If you got stuck for a few cards in your hand and didn't curve out that well. So yeah, I think this is like a really good way to stabilize and hopefully turn the corner in a slower white X controlling deck.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I think you're very right. Kind of like most of the time, you're going to be getting 1 to 2 of these effects. Like, yeah, you're never getting all of them, and you're never really going to get none of them. You're always going to get something. Obviously, as an ETB effect, probably just worth mentioning that it does get better with flicker, that kind of stuff. For me, the bigger thing is more. I want, like, I know why it doesn't have a keyword. I'm assuming it's just because there isn't enough room on the bloody card. But if this, like even if this had like vigilance or something like that, I think I would like it a lot more. Like, obviously, flying would be nuts. But like, white 4s is very competitive. Like, this is not Palace Jailer. This is not Gideon Ally of Zendikar. This isn't Sarah Paragon. I think there's kind of other things that fall that kind of just give you better value, like in the higher power level cubes anyway. I think yeah. In more kind of like mid power level cubes, in more kind of mid rangey cubes, this could see more play. You have a bit more time to kind of get your value out of this, that kind of thing, and kind of like maybe you don't have to play it straight away. You can maybe wait a turn and do something else, that kind of thing. I think it's okay. I think it's a solid start to this review. I'm just not like super excited by it, if that makes sense. I think it's just like it's a white 4 drop that kind of gives you a little bit of value, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not super high on that, but it is a solid card.
Yeah, I think I'm not slamming this into the super powerful cubes, but I think if you're trying to push white in as being more than just an aggressive color, if you want to give a bit of a boost to blue-white control, say, I think replacing, say, a Hero of Bladehold or whatever with this card kind of changes that balance a little bit. I think it does have the power level that the right deck will want this, and it will be good.
Yeah, that's fair. I will also say that I hate blue-white control decks, so I'd listen to James on this one rather than me, I think. Right, but a card that's, I'm a bit more on board with. Next up, we have Jacked Rabbit. This is X, 1 and a white, for a 1/2 creature rabbit warrior. It has Ravenous, which is this creature enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If X is 5 or more, draw a card when it enters. And it also has, whenever Jacked Rabbit attacks, create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to Jacked Rabbit's power. So, good to see Ravenous back after the Warhammer set. This time it's in white, when last time it was representing the Tyrannid Horde. I think this is pretty good. This is basically a Rabble Master, but in white. So if you just play this for 2 mana, when it attacks, you get a 1/1 each turn. That's fine. I think you're okay with that. At 3 mana, I think it's solid. It's not as good as a Rabble Master, because Rabble Masters will just, like, the creature itself gets bigger and you just make generally more tokens. The bigger drawback with this is the fact that tokens aren't tapped and attacking, compared to some of the other Rabble Master style effects. The tokens come in, you get your damage earlier with those, whereas this, they have to wait a turn to get your combat damage in with the white rabbits. But the main thing with this for me is that the fact that it just scales really well into the late game. Like, this is a great top deck later in the game. Just put a bunch of mana of this, make a bunch of tokens. Yes, you do need to get in an attack with it to be happy. Like, it could just eat a removal spell and then you've kind of lost all your value. But that's kind of the same with any creature without an ETB. I think this is pretty solid. I could see white decks, I could see white aggressive decks wanting this, as well as decks that care about tokens being happy with this as well.
Yeah, I quite like the card. I think there's a lot going on here. The challenge is obviously just having a good attack with this, because whilst it does scale with the game in that you have more mana, it's bigger, it is also understated at every point in the curve, right? So if it's just a game where you play creatures on curve and your opponent plays creatures on curve, and this is rarely going to have a good attack, you're going to need to prioritize waiters to get their blockers out of the way to actually get your attack in. Having said that, if this is fairly big, then an attack with this is scary enough that your opponent's really going to have to respect that you could remove their blockers. I think you'll get a lot of free life points off your opponent just not wanting to attack you in order to have, say, 2 blockers back, because they're scared of you removing their blocker, getting in with this and creating a bunch of tokens. Because you really don't want to be in the scenario where you're like racing against this card, right? You don't want to be, I attack you and then you attack me with your Jacked Rabbit, because you're going to make a whole bunch of tokens and those tokens can then chump block the attacker. I think the other place I really like this is just if you can run it out on turn 2 and then have a bunch of ways to buff its power later.
Yeah, or like either other +1/+1 counters or like equipment or something like that seems pretty good with this.
Yeah, for sure. Like, say you just play this into like a Luminarch or something.
Yeah.
Then you're getting a new attack, you're getting 2, and it's, every turn it's getting bigger, you're getting more tokens. It's really going to snowball from there if they can't remove it. Yeah, really solid card. I think it's, the white aggro decks do just have really strong creatures at all points on the curve where you want them. So it's not, I don't think it's an auto include in the sort of powered cube, but if you have any sort of token stuff going on, honestly, even if you've got some +1/+1 counter stuff going on, this is kind of just a nice payoff for that. Because you get to buff for power later. I think really, really solid inclusion.
Yeah, like this swole lad. Love it.
Okay, moving on to blue, we have Dour Port Mage. This is 1 blue for a 1/3 creature frog wizard. At rare, it has whenever 1 or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, you draw a card. So that could be Flicker, that could be Bounce, that could be Exile. And also has an activated ability of 1 blue and tap the Port Mage to return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. Obviously trigger the static ability and draw you a card. So I mostly see this as a bit of a build around for a Flicker deck. It's basically going to draw a card onto every one of your Flicker effects. If you have any sort of repeatable Flicker effects, that's going to be pretty nice. It is 1 or more, so it's not like you Yori in your board and you draw 5 cards. You still just get 1, but you can trigger that a few times and be pretty happy with that, I think. But this activated ability is also just pretty powerful when you have the mana to leave it up. So I think it does get a bit better if you have other stuff to your instant speeds, then you can leave up the option of this and then not waste your mana if you don't want to use it. But, when you've got this up, they can't really play spot removal on any of your other creatures. And you can just block with your creature, line up what would otherwise be a bad trump block, and then just return the creature to your hand, get a card, get some value. And obviously, if you have any creatures with good ETBs, you can just proactively return those creatures to your hand, draw a card, recast them, get that ETB again. You're on a nice value train at that point. This card in a long game, is where you have a lot of mana available, is going to offer you a tremendous amount of value, but it is all pretty slow. And I mean, it can be powerful, but you need ways to make sure you get to the long game so you have that mana around to actually start using this. It is not a great card at keeping you alive on its own. It's just a 1/3. And you need a bit of other defensive speed. And obviously, it's an engine that they can just kill. But I think in the right deck, this will be a creature they have to kill. And that's quite good for 2 mana.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what you said about ETBs is great. Is there a world where you just grief them twice in a turn with this? With the sack trigger on the stack, bring it back to your hand, draw another black card to pitch to the grief again, something like that.
Oh, you're speaking my language there.
That's pretty vibey. Vibey. No, I agree with everything you said. The only other place I could see this seeing some play is actually a lot of kind of more mid-range or mid-power level cubes. I've definitely tried the Ninja deck in the past. Could be pretty good there because the draw a card will trigger off of ninjutsu when you bring something back to your hand. Sometimes you do just end up with the ninjas stuck in play, not able to attack because your opponent can block them. So this can also return the ninjas back to your hand, so you can ninjutsu them into play for an unblocked creature. Kind of that is a bit more of a niche of an archetype. It's not seen in as many cubes as it was around the time Modern Horizons 1 came out, but it is a fun archetype. And if you're doing ninjas, if you're doing ninjas and probably blink and flicker in kind of the same kind of cube, then I would consider this as a nice overlap card, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, next up we have Kitzer Otterball Elite. It is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary creature, Otter Wizard. It has Vigilance, Prowess, and tap, draw a card, then discard a card, so it's a looter, and then pay 2 and tap it to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate if Kitzer's power is 3 or greater. I do think this is pretty cool. It kind of feels like somewhere of a cross between a regular Merfolk looter and a looter, as something like a looter core that draws you a card when it does combat damage. You feel like you get the best of both because I like the Vigilance, which means it can attack, and then you can do the looting afterwards as well, all in one turn. You can get your value. the prowess, like the fact it has prowess means it's going to be quite a proactive attacker as well, and the 1/3 body means it can block quite well as well. And then the prowess also kind of plays into the bottom ability. Like, I'm assuming this, like, as prowess is a cast trigger, you can basically copy the second spell you've cast in a turn, because the first one will pump its power up to 2, the second one will put it up to 3. But you can do that before the spell resolves because it's a cast trigger, so you can copy your second spell in a turn. Is that right, James?
Yeah, exactly. Cast my Ponder, copy my Time Walk. Good game.
Perfect. Yeah. Like, for me, this seems quite strong in, like, I mean this in a good way when I say this, but like the most generic Izzet deck you could imagine. Like, in a deck that's kind of full of I do mean that in a good way, but it's a deck that's kind of like, it's basically full of prowess creatures, and all your spells are counter spells, ops, and lightning bolts. Like, it does actually seem pretty solid there. Like as a base level, but yes, obviously, copying some big dumb spells is also going to be very strong. Like your Time Walks and the like are going to be very solid as well. What do you think of Kitzer, James?
Yeah, I think this card's really solid. I remember we used to just put Merfolk Looter in like Powered Cube, and it was pretty good, you know? We're a long way past that. Yeah, this is kind of just a pretty pushed card, I think. 2 mana 1/3 Looter is already just not bad. And 1/3 is a really nice stat line for prowess. Low power, high toughness prowess creatures actually play a lot better than the other way around, because say this was a 3/1, you can just pretty confidently block it with a 2/2 or attack into it with a 2/2, because they'd have to have 2 spells to have it eat that creature. Whereas a 1/3, there's a real like threat of activation thing. You will and you'll get a lot of value off this where you didn't even have the spell, just because they won't want to attack into it, because if you have a random consider, then you get to just eat that creature. You should also, against the right opponent, probably consider chump attacking sometimes, where you actually can't do the thing, because they'll be scared of it. Yeah, so you'll get in some nice free damage, you'll save some damage off of blocks just from that stat line. You don't have to give up for looting to do that, because it has vigilance. And then on top of that, you have this nice copy ability later in the game when you have a little bit more mana. So you're probably looking at 4 mana is like the first time you can realistically do that, right? That's with 2 1-mana spells. So you go like, play a cantrip, lightning bolt, copy it. The issue then you're going to have is like, well, you probably had to give up something to get there, because you had to save your cantrip or your lightning bolt to make this work, right? If you just played your cards out naturally, you have probably cast those cards before you got there. And there is, I think, a little bit of tension between a mana sink and a looter, in that often a lot of what looters do is discard excess lands. So obviously you can certainly still get to 4, but if you're trying to copy more expensive stuff, it's a bit like, well, what were you discarding then? Because are you actually going to keep extra lands over spells that you could cast to try and get to that copy ability, or are you just going to cast your spells? But I don't think that's a big knock on the card, just worth mentioning. It's basically a very strong card. There's a lot of competition at the blue 2-drop spot at this point. Got a lot of like really nice cards in that slot in the last few years, even like Fairy Mastermind, Duelist of the Mind. Basically like people winning the world championships and wanting 2-mana blue creatures as their cards. And like obviously going back a bit, Jace Prodigy, I think is kind of best in class in the Merfolk Looters. But I would certainly give this a test, maybe over some of those cards and see how it plays.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just had a look. Merfolk Looter only came out on my cube 3 years ago, 2021. How times have changed. For what it's worth, it was replaced with Thought Courier, which is another looter, but it's a human, James. And then that came out a month later. But it's kind of wild how far these cards have come in the last couple of years. I think it's a pretty solid card. Yeah, as you mentioned, the competition is pretty high, but I can see people testing this, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid with it. Yeah, it could be a very strong card.
Okay, next up we have Season of Weaving. This is 4 blue for a sorcery at Mythic Rare. It says you may choose up to... I don't know what to call this. It says you may choose up to 5 paws. If we call them paws? Is there a name for them?
This is a bit of a weird mechanic. They have said that the mechanic will come back again, but like the symbol on the card is literally a paw. You get 5 paws. Think of it like an energy you can only use on this card, basically. They have said that this mechanic will return, but they're going to change this little symbol to match other sets. So if they're back on Kaladesh, it could be like a cog or something like that. For this, because it's the cute animal set, it's a little paw.
Okay, well, I'm just going to call them paws for now.
Okay, yeah, good.
Choose up to 5 paws worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For 1 paw, you may draw a card. For 2 paws, you may choose an artifact or creature you control and create a token that's a copy of it. And for 3 paws, you may return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. So obviously there's a bunch of combinations you can do here. You could just draw 5 cards. You can create a copy of something and then bounce all the non-land, non-tokens. You could create a copy and draw 3 cards. This is obviously very powerful. The mode that kind of jumps out to me is create a token that's a copy of your best thing and then bounce all the non-tokens, because that actually lets you get ahead on board a little bit.
Yeah, that seems great if you're at parity and kind of want to break a board stall wide open.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, in the right scenario, you'll just draw 5, and that's great too. Having said, the kind of a downside of the bounce everything thing is just by default, your opponent does get to replay their stuff first. So unless that token was really powerful, they're probably going to be able to get ahead again on their turn. Having said all that, if you got to a ton of mana, you can kind of do the thing like you do with Upheaval. Obviously, it's a lot less powerful because you're not bouncing lands, but you could say you got to like 9 mana, you could cast this and then cast a 3-drop again. That's pretty good. Overall, like the flexibility is great. It can get you ahead a little bit on board. The question is just, does the blue decks in your cube want a 6 mana sorcery that doesn't like end the game?
Or isn't Treasure Cruise?
Yeah, like, but it actually just costs 6 mana is the issue.
Yeah.
I'd sort of compare this to maybe something like Sublime Epiphany if you wanted that real top end, expensive non-creature spell.
That's the one. Yeah, Sublime Epiphany is the one I have written down, but that you just really get your opponent with that, because it's also a counter spell that they're like normally if you're casting a 6 or 7 mana counter spell, you are getting like a lot of value at, like you are casting something quite impactful at that point in the game, and then all the other modes of Sublime Epiphany are just kind of backbreaking as well. Whereas like Seasons of Weaving is kind of, they're all good. I don't think any of the modes are bad, but they're all just good and fine. Whereas like if you activate every mode of Sublime Epiphany, like get your opponent a body bag, you have ruined them.
Yeah, and it's also with the Sublime Epiphany, it's like they've just tapped a bunch of their mana to play their spell. You get them. There's not a bunch of bad stuff happening to you before you untap most of the time. Whereas with this, it's like, you get a ton of value. When you just say go, your shields are down, and your opponent can do their worst to you. I think it's a cool card. I think this needs to be in a slightly slower cube to actually be a card you want to include.
No, exactly. How do you feel about it in a deck that's trying to like cheat cast big spells? Like since we've been doing the Dream Hall stuff, and Mizzix's Mastery, trying to cast big spells for free, I have just been going on Scryfall, typing the word instant sorcery and like doing mana value descending a lot, just looking for big spells. This is like I'm not saying it's like, it's legitimately a draw 5. Kind of like this does seem like fine in a Dream Halls deck, if I'm honest with you. Like it's not like there aren't as many big impactful spells as kind of you think there are actually. Like it does kind of dry up once you go past like the ultimatums and Sublime Epiphany and that kind of stuff. Like I could see a world where this is fine in that deck. Like especially if you're doing it in kind of like a more like maybe not in the highest power level cube, but kind of all like if you don't have wheels, basically, if you're trying to support the deck and you don't have wheels, I think this could be solid.
Yeah, cool idea. Because you do need to draw a lot of cards in that deck, and there aren't that many draw 5s. And it's not like an ultimatum where you could never cast it, right? You will get to 6 mana sometimes. It's kind of unfortunate that the bounce mode bounces your dream halls.
Yes.
But
that is an issue. Yeah.
But you can just draw 5 and kill them with the 5 cards you draw. Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Exactly. The only other thing I've just thought of is we. What did you call them? Did you call them paws? You call them paws?
I called them paws. You can call them whatever you like.
I think we should rename them beans, James. You get 5 beans.
But I would argue that each paw has 5 beans attached.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Nah.
In which case you can choose up to 25 beans worth.
I like them all. Yeah. You get 5 lots of 5 beans. The first one is 5 beans draws a card. There we go. Perfect.
This won't be confusing at all.
Not in the slightest. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Storm Chaser's Talent. This is a single blue for a enchantment class. Classes are back. I think we first saw them in, I'm guessing, one of the D&D sets. The first level is when Storm Chaser's Talent enters, create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. You can level it up once it's in play, so you can pay a 3 and a blue to level it up to level 2. When this class becomes level 2, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And then to level it up to level 3, on top of that, everything you've done so far, you have to pay 5 and a blue. And then it gets the ability, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. So for me, this is another card for the Izzet deck that is caring about ops and lightning bolts. 1 mana to make a prowess creature is a fine base in those. You get something out of this straight away. And the fact it's an enchantment means it will trigger other prowess effects you have. Prowess is non-creature spell, I believe. So this being enchantment will trigger prowess on your other prowess creatures, which is nice. For me, one of the bigger drawbacks of this card is the fact that you can only level up at sorcery speed when this is going in a deck specifically that wants to be playing instants to react to what your opponent is doing. Like it wants to hold up counter magic. It wants to hold up that lightning bolt. As a deck, one of its main benefits is being able to interact at instant speed. This means you have to kind of tap out on your turn. That's not as good. But I guess really late game when you have 6 or 7 lands in play, you are kind of fine to just level this up to level 2 and get back a key spell. Like maybe on like turn 6, you put this up to level 4, you bring back a counter spell, and they just know whatever they cast is getting hard countered. Like that could be quite nice. And then being honest, I don't think you're ever gonna go to level 3. 6 mana to get a otter with prowess when you cast an instant sorcery isn't good enough in a world where Shark Typhoon exists. But level 1 and 2, I think, are fine in lower power level cubes. Like if you are pushing that prowess, kind of like it is a more proactive deck. Like you are turning your creatures sideways a lot more. In those decks just want a critical density of prowess creatures, and just the utility of level 2 could be just good enough to get in. Basically, like treat this as a 1 mana 1/1 prowess with upside, basically. And I think you might be all right with that.
Yeah, I think that's the spot where this would be good if there was just a deck where you were happy with a 1 mana 1/1 prowess. I'm sure I've been on this soapbox before, but let's do it again. But the issue I always have with these blue-red prowess stacks, of essentially blue-red, like aggressive power stacks, and the reason I find they don't tend to come together that often, is that you're a synergy deck that relies on you getting a bunch of good, very cheap spells. The thing is, everyone else already wants the good, cheap spells. That's not it's not like, oh, I'm not going to take this Ponder because I'm not in prowess. No, Ponder's just great. The cheap cantrips tend to just be good. The cheap removal spells tend to just be good. So it's just really hard to get enough of them to actually want a 1 mana 1/1 prowess in your deck. And most of the time, that is kind of what this is, because it's, you're 5 mana deep by the time you've got a spell back. It being a non-creature is nice. If you're really trying to push that theme, then maybe this could be good. I guess you could lean into it by playing a bunch of cheap spells that other decks don't want. But I think in general, I've found this theme a little bit hard to get to work. And honestly, if you're doing this thing, there are kind of higher power level payoffs available. Not so much at 1 mana, but if you start to look into for 2 and 3 manas, you've got your Sprite Dragon, Stormwing Entity, that sort of stuff is kind of feels like a much more real payoff for doing that thing than this card.
Yeah, I'd agree. I really agree. I'd agree with all that. Yeah, I've tried a couple of times to get I struggle just in general in my cubing, kind of like what is it trying to do? Because like so many of the cards that it's got and is good at is kind of this kind of spell slinger kind of deck. But you're right, people splash Lightning Bolt, people splash Remand, that kind of stuff. Like it's tricky for the deck to come together.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next up we have Thunder Trap Trainer. This is 1 blue for a 1/2 creature otter wizard. It has Offspring for 4 mana. I think this is the first time we've hit Offspring. So Offspring is basically a kicker cost you can pay. And if you pay it, then you get a token that's a copy of this creature, except for it's a 1/1. So you can pay 2 mana for a 1/2, or a total of 6 mana for a 1/2 and a 1/1. Doesn't sound great so far, but it's got an ETB. When this creature enters, you can look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's kind of like an Augur of Bolas, but quite a lot better because you're getting to look at the top 4 cards, whereas Augur only looks at 3, and you get to take any non-creature, non-land, whereas as the Augur only takes instants and sorceries. That means you're just way more likely to hit. In my opinion, Augur, even though I feel like it crops up in a lot of cubes, and then often people put it in their deck, and it's mostly look at the bottom 3 cards of your library.
Yeah, very much so.
This is way easier to hit. It really skews the maths getting the extra card, and it's just way easier to have like 15 hits for this in your deck. Not big, because it also hits artifacts, it also hits enchantments, it also hits planeswalkers. Is that good enough? In the right cube, I think yes. In the right deck, it's nice to blink. You get some good value. If you get really late into the game, you can pay that Offspring cost, but I don't think that's most of what the card's about. But at that point, you're looking at the top 8. You're gonna hit some good stuff. Yeah, probably one for like a Flicker deck, recurring that ETB value, or for maybe a Wizard's Tribal deck. They tend to have a lot of non-creature spells, and this is a wizard. Obviously, if you're just going for maximum power level, there are better blue 2-drops available, but this certainly has some applications, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Just 4 cards is quite a lot. Like it was only like a year or 2 ago. I was running Watcher for Tomorrow, and that digs you 3 cards, but has like Hideaway, so you have to wait for it to die before you get the card or something like that. And that card was fine. And like this is, 4 cards is a lot. You'll definitely get something, and I think just basically at that point you're kind of just fine just having this as a little blocker. Like I think this is a perfectly fine role player in those kind of decks. I'm not super excited by it, but I think it's pretty solid. The only kind of hot thing I was thinking of when you reminded me it was a wizard. What's that land that bounces a wizard hand? Riptide Laboratory. That's pretty vibey. That card probably got way better from this set, actually. Now I think about it.
You could play Naban to double all your wizard ETBs.
There we go.
I think strong card. Just don't put it in a deck with like 15 creatures. You will miss way too often. But outside of that, I think this is solid.
Yeah, no, completely agree. All right, we're moving on to black now. Next up, we have Darkstar Augur. It is 2 and a black.
Surely Augur. Surely Augur.
Augur. It is. Next up, we have Darkstar Augur. That's what I said? How are you saying it? Augur.
No, you do you.
No, how you say it? Is it Augur?
I'd have thought Augur.
Okay. Next up, we have Darkstar Augur. It is 2 and a black for a 2/3 creature bat warlock. It has Offspring for a single black. It also has flying, and importantly, at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value. So, this is effectively 1 extra mana for a flying Dark Confidant. that can also come in with a 1/1 copy of itself. The flying on this in the token, I do actually think is very relevant. It means it can actually get in for some damage. It can actually attack, whereas Bob, I think, is a 2/1, which kind of dies pretty easily. This having 3 toughness means yes, it'll die to lightning bolt, but it won't die to shock. That's at least something. Having played this, I've actually played this already. Having 2 Bobs in play is very strong. You do lose a lot of life very quickly, but it's not called greatness at some cost. When I had this in play, I got down to sub 8 life exceptionally quickly, actually, and I was just in a regular limited deck. And at that point, I was looking for ways of trading off the token. I could actually see the offspring part, meaning that this is actually pretty good in like an aristocrat kind of deck. One, because the life total, or the life loss, isn't as bad in those decks because you have like drain effects to get some life back, which is nice. And then 2, because you can sack the token when you need to, so you don't just die from the top of your deck. As a card, though, a 3-mana Dark Confidant with flying is just good. If I'm honest, this is probably just be the most cubed cards in the set, just because off the bat anyway, just because people know that Dark Confidant is good. This is a second Dark Confidant. It's a little sad you can't have this in a Lurrus Companion deck. That's the only major downside I have with this, but I still really like this card. I think it's just going to see a wide amount of cube play, basically.
Yeah, this seems cool. My notes for this just say, make 2 Bobs, you coward.
Do it. Do it, James.
Honestly, I've seen a bunch of people talk about this card for like modern stuff, saying like, oh, you never kick this card because 2 Bobs is, you're going to die too quickly. I think if your opponent, unless your opponent's actually putting you under a bunch of pressure, your default, if you can kick this, it's really good to do so. Because mostly when you play a Bob, your opponent really wants to kill the Bob. And just killing 1/2 of this is really not very effective if you can get to that 4 mana and kick it.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be this massive stream of card advantage. And because it has flying, you can, if your opponent does get to a point where they're putting you under pressure, this can chump block any of their creatures.
Exactly.
So you can get your cards out of it and then just block if your opponent's attacking you. And if your opponent isn't attacking you, well, you probably don't need to get these off the board because you can just ride your wave of card advantage to the win. Obviously, this is on the caveat of your deck has to be relatively low curve.
We're not Grizzle branding people.
Yeah, let's not put Archon of Cruelty in this deck. But outside of that, I think this card's pretty strong. I would still say that the difference between 2 and 3 mana for this sort of effect is huge because it's a creature that even if a 3 mana 2/3 flyer is still not massively affecting the board. And it's much easier to take turn 2 off affecting the board than turn 3. So I'd still probably have Dark Confidant and probably Caustic Bronco ahead of this card a little bit, but not by a lot. I think the card's pretty strong. And if you play against like an attrition matchup where your opponent's just trying to kill all your creatures, they're going to have an absolute nightmare with this because you're putting, for 4 mana, you're putting 2 creatures into play and they really feel like they need to remove both of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm generally expecting this card to just be, pretty good and just the most played card from the set, if I'm honest with you. Although, actually, I quite like the next one. James, you want to talk about a little lizard assassin we have coming up?
Yeah, so next up we have Iridescent Vinelasher. This is a single black mana for a 1/2 creature lizard assassin with offspring for 2. So you can pay a black for a 1/2 or 2 and a black for a 1/2 and a 1/1 as a copy of it. And it has a landfall ability. So whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. Listen, if you run this out on turn 1, it is going to get in for some damage, assuming you continue to hit your land drops. Obviously, you'll fetch lands, then it gets in for 2. I think that's going to struggle to be high impact enough in most games. The thing is, the decks that are really good at continuing to hit their land drops later in the game tend to not be as aggressive. I mean, even if you manage to get 2 of these out and you play it for the offspring, well, you're not really having a big impact on the board in that turn, and just getting in for 2 off each of your land drops, while your opponent's probably going to be hitting you back for more damage than that by just attacking with their creatures. if you get to make a bunch of land drops in a turn, it gets a bit more interesting. There is a little bit of combo potential here with...
Say it, James. Say it.
For example, if you have a fast bond in play, you can... and probably the best thing to do is, but obviously, if you're doing any of the fast bond, crucible, zero orb stuff, it will just kill your opponent. That's great. Although normally you win those games anyway. You can also potentially kill your opponent with just like this, a fast bond and a bounce land. So like a Simic Growth Chamber, that sort of thing. So you can just, the bounce land can continue to bounce itself. And basically you're paying a life for your fast bond and dealing them 1 damage if you just have 1 of this. So if you're already ahead on life, you can just kill your opponent on the spot. If you're not already ahead on life, you might need to find a way to gain some life or deal some extra damage, or get 2 of these into play with the offspring, and then each land drop deals 2 to them and only 1 to you, so you can probably kill them from there. You could obviously try and do like scape shift stuff with this as well. That's another way to put a lot of lands into play in 1 turn. But honestly, at that point, like turning your scape shift into a deal 7 or something, like those decks don't tend to get in for much other damage, so that I think is often not going to be enough to kill your opponent, and you should probably look more towards the Valakut Dryad stuff to enable that. So yeah, I think it's got some like kind of interesting potential, but I think it is probably a bit niche.
I'm definitely a little higher on this than I think you are, and like I think it's just because I'm really liking the look of the lands deck, but kind of in Golgari, kind of trying to pushing it more that way, with things like the Gitrog monster, with like Titania, that kind of stuff, and just like, yeah, and I just think kind of like this is a solid role player in that kind of deck. Like if you have 2 of these, it just turns a fetch land into 4 damage, and that is a lot. And like it gets, yeah, as you mentioned with the Crucible stuff, which kind of like is more in the Golgari kind of realm of things, of like the self mill playing stuff from graveyard. Like I think this is going to be more doable in the Golgari builds, rather, because like the lands deck right now is kind of, it's more like it's effectively kind of like a 4-color Omnath deck that has land stuff around it baked into it. But I think kind of like an actual landsy graveyard deck does exist in Golgari, and I think this is a pretty solid role player there. And I put it in my cube. I'm kind of interested to see how it goes. And like, yeah, it is basically, I want this with like bounce lands and fast bond or other effects that let you play multiple lands in a turn. So like Azusa, Exploration, that kind of stuff. Like that's kind of where you can do a bit more broken things with this, when it's kind of like when you're 2 or 4ing them every turn. That's where I like this a little bit more than just like, yeah, just 1ing them a turn isn't going to get there. If you can kind of juice it up a bit, that's where I'm here for it.
I could see that as my concern is that there are spots where it's a little bit win more. Like often if you're making a ton of land drops in those decks, like you're going off with a Titania returning lands to play or whatever, then you're already winning the game. And if you don't have another one of those payoffs, then unless you're killing them on the spot, it's you can deal a bunch of damage to them, but it doesn't help you stay alive.
No, that's fair. I think in my mind, it's more of a redundancy thing than here is like the best thing this deck is doing. It's just because even though we've had so many sets and like Landfall's been a very popular mechanic, there still isn't like that deck is still a work in progress. We haven't found like I don't think there's like a set deck that kind of like, this is the lands deck in Cube, this is what it's doing. Because like people are still trying things like Valakut. I've tried that a couple of times with Scapeshift. Don't feel like it's got there personally yet. I guess kind of the closest we've got now is like the people are trying the domain deck, that kind of stuff, like the 5-color decks. Maybe that is the way of taking it. But like I think there's room to explore with this, and kind of like, yeah, I am open to this just being a bit underwhelming. But I just, having more of these effects for me, I think will at least make will make my cube drafters more open to trying this deck, and then I can actually kind of test it properly a little bit, if that kind of makes sense.
For sure. I can definitely see I could be underrating this a little bit. I think it doesn't have to be one or the other with the Valakut stuff. I think the Valakut, because the thing I like about Valakut, right, is if you have Valakut Prismatic Omen or Valakut Dryad, then you don't need the Scape Shift all the time. Like, obviously you want Scape Shift in your deck, but the Valakut is still doing something. Like, you play a fetch land and crack a fetch land with Valakut and a Omen, then you get to deal 3 to that creature, deal 3 to the other creature, and it keeps you alive, right? Whereas this only kills them. And if it doesn't kill them, then it doesn't help you stay alive. But I guess it does put some blockers into play if you need it to.
No, fair. Yeah, no. Let's move. Like, this next card is a little bit more in your face about what it's up to. Next up, we have Mahar, Its Feathers Knight. It is 3 black for a 6/5 legendary creature elemental bird. It has flying, trample, ward, discard a card, and creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. So this looks miserable. Like, to play against, this looks awful. So just a 5-mana 6/5 Flample with ward discard a card is already just fantastic as just like a beater. Your opponent has to 2 for 1 themselves most of the time to kill this thing. That's pretty good. And yeah, it just I feel this is going to play out really miserable for your opponent. Kind of like it almost feels kind of like a Staxy card in some way. Kind of like just as the bottom ability, giving all your opponent's creatures toughness 1 is just immensely oppressive. And like, it's been a while since I've seen a Pestilence in cube outside of a Peasant cube, but that does feel kind of dirty. Like, a single black to deal 1 damage to each creature with this out is just dreadful. The main downside, obviously, is that most cubes, this is just a big idiot. It doesn't give you any value in any kind of other way, but it will probably be pretty solid. And like, if you land this, gonna be hard to remove. Like, pretty solid card, but
for sure, I think it's got a lot of good stuff going on. It does certainly have that issue of kind of clunky 5-mana creature, but the ward does help there, right? Because the issue with big 5-mana creature without a powerful ETB is that your opponent points a 1 or 2 mana removal spell at it and got a huge mana advantage, and you got nothing back for it. Whereas this, at least you are 2-for-1ing yourself in that. They are 2-for-1ing themselves in that scenario. Still maybe not a great exchange for you, but it helps. The ability is interesting. Obviously, it's, base level, it just means any block that is made is at worst a trade for you. That's certainly not bad. There are ways you can make it gross, obviously. You could even go, you could play a card like End the Festivities, and then that's just a Plague Wind for 1 mana with this in play.
Or even just Deluging for 1.
Yeah, but obviously those cards, something like Karvek, they can never have a creature in play. But that's probably a bit narrow for Cube. I think that is a commander thing, isn't it? But for Cube, just imagine you have this in play and you cast a Fury or a Pyrokinesis and you just kill 4 of their creatures. Even just like an Orcish Bowmasters can now kill anything. Or obviously any repeatable ping effect is kind of gross. Yeah, seems like a solid card. Has the 5-mana creature problem a little bit, but maybe still worth trying.
James, when like demons used to have downsides.
Yeah, it's not where we're at anymore, I'm afraid.
Jesus Christ, look at this thing. This is maddening. Oh my god. All right, we have a squirrel friend next, James. You want to take it away with our next black card?
Yeah, next up we have Osteomancer Adept. This is 1 black for a 2/2 creature squirrel warlock. It has Death Touch, and you can tap it to, until end of turn, you may cast creature spells from your graveyard by foraging in addition to paying their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters with a finality counter on it. And to forage, you have to either exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. This card seems pretty powerful to me, actually. Firstly, the fact they put Death Touch on it means it's just a lot less embarrassing when the recursion part of it isn't good. Because even if you're building around it inside Self-Mill, there'll be times where you've not set that up, and just getting to trade this for anything on the ground is quite nice. And that recursion thing is quite powerful because it's not a sack it and you have to Yogg and play a bunch of stuff out of your yard in 1 turn. You can just keep doing this and casting 1 creature every turn, and that's pretty good. That's a lot of value if you can get it going. So the cost is exiling 3 cards from your graveyard each turn is going to be really tough. So I think this is probably at its best in a food deck with a little bit of self-mill, hopefully. And food has got a lot of tools recently. It seems like every set we just get some interesting food cards, and I'm kind of down to just put them all in a cube and see what happens. Because I think there's some pretty powerful stuff there, actually. Like, you see the food stuff working well in formats like Canadian Highlander, which has a lot of similarities, actually, in terms of which cards work compared to Cube. So yeah, I've not really, other than one sort of two-player cube, I've not played a cube with a big food theme yet. I've been toying around with putting it in Powered Cube, but I think it's still a bit tough for Powered Cube. But I think for anything below that on the sort of power level scale, I think the food stuff could be really cool at this point. I'm kind of keen to try it.
Yeah. I think maybe me and you should have a chat about the food deck at some point. Because like from my end, I guess I was evaluating this card just like in the vacuum that is Cube right now, where we don't really have that. And like I think this card is pretty solid there. There's something like I think one thing kind of like if you have enough cards in your graveyard, this just to say you may cast creature spells from your graveyard. So you can, in theory, cast multiple in a turn with this, as long as you have enough fuel in your graveyard. And kind of like, I think, yeah, without the food stuff, it is a little bit tricky just because, I mean, we've just had Emperor of Bones, which kind of does it feels like it does a similar thing to this. Kind of like different ways of doing it, but kind of like the roundabout way is kind of like the end result is you get a creature back from your graveyard into play, which I think is kind of the main thing with this. But it's being an annoying blocker. I think it's just going to be a very solid card. And yeah, I am interested to try the food stuff. I think we can definitely have a chat about that at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of sick in a lower stack as well, right?
Yeah.
Because those decks you're like proactively self-milling anyway a lot of the time and already have good stuff to occur.
Yeah, exactly. Like Stitcher's Supply just keeps getting better, James.
Mm.
All right, let's move on to our next card. Next up, we have Thoughtstalker Warlock. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature lizard warlock. It has menace, and when it enters, choose target opponent. If they lost life this turn, they reveal their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and they discard that card. Otherwise, they discard a card. So this is an uncommon, and I think off the bat this is a peasant card is probably the only place where this is going to see play. But in those cubes, menace is a very real keyword. And having an opponent lose life in an aggressive deck is not that hard. It's also not combat damage. It can be loss of life from Blood Artist or a drain effect, that kind of stuff. And then you basically get a free duress. I think that's pretty good. The otherwise they discard a card part. Ideally, you do want to be able to trigger this so you can pick the card you're stealing from them. Otherwise, they're just going to pitch a land or the most like either unimpactful spell or the card that kind of like is furthest away from being cast. But like if you can facilitate this, I think it's a decent payoff for an aggro deck in those formats, just because like if you get in for damage on turn 3, you play this and you take their board wipe or the thing that's going to stabilize them, you're very happy with that. And like yeah, not for higher power level cubes, but I think it's just a solid card in peasant cubes, if I'm honest.
Yeah, for sure. If you have a good chance of dealing damage to them on the third turn of the game, this is probably going to be pretty solid for you in your peasant cube deck. So it's just about trying to get some good 1-2 mana creatures into your deck, ideally some evasive ones, so you can get that Thoughtseize effect more of the time rather than just making them discard a card of their choice. But really, if it works, 60% of the time, you're probably pretty happy with that, because 2 mana 2/2 menace, they discard a card. It's like, yeah, it's not great, but it's not completely embarrassing when it doesn't work, and when it does, I think it's pretty strong.
Nice. All right, we're on to red, James.
Yeah,
We have another lizard for you.
Sure do. First up in red, we have
a gate.
A gate. I'm going to go with a gate instigator.
Yeah, good.
A gate instigator is 1 red for a 1/3 creature lizard rogue. It has offspring for 1 red, so for 4 mana you can get this plus a 1/1 copy of itself. And it has, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So as just a 2-drop creature in a generic red aggressive deck, I think this isn't great because it doesn't really attack very well, and I think you would mostly get more damage by having a creature that is more likely to be able to attack than you will get off these triggers. But if you're building around it, this can get pretty scary into the late game, especially if you pay on 4 and get that offspring mode, because then the triggers do really stack up. Yeah, it's also worth noting you will get, if you pay the offspring cost, you will get 1 damage on the way in, because the creature itself enters first, then the token enters, so the creature will see the token entering. But yeah, if you get 2 of these out there in a tokens deck, that is starting to look pretty scary, because then each token is 2 damage. You know, you holding Outburst with 2 of these in play, just dealing 6. That's kind of interesting. Probably not one for super high power level cube, but for kind of a mid power level cube with a tokens theme going on, maybe like Boros tokens. I could see this being a pretty good card.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I think the thing I like about this card is that because it can be cast for like 2 or 4 mana, those are kind of the perfect points, effectively, like around your Rebel Masters. Those are the cards I really want to play this with. Kind of like if you have nothing to do on turn 2, but you have a Rebel Master in hand, play this on turn 2, play the Rebel Master on turn 3. If you have something to do on turn 2, play the Rebel Master on turn 3, then play this on turn 4, and then swing with your Rebel Master, and they'll take a bunch of damage from all the tokens. Yeah, solid, interesting card. I do agree, probably not there for the more high power level cubes. Kind of like, we've had similar effects to this in the past, and they've not really seen a super amount of play. Things like Impact Tremors, Perforos. Like recently we've had Molten Gatekeeper as well. They haven't really seen that amount of play, but this having the flexibility of being a 2-drop that does 1 damage or a 4-drop that deals 2 damage, I think is a nice spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if they saw play, but yeah, not for every cube. I think kind of like, if you have a heavy token deck, then I think you want this more. So
yeah, makes sense.
All right, moving on. Next we have Jesus. Coruscation Mage?
That sounded like a word.
Yeah, cool. We'll go with that. We have Coruscation Mage. It is an adorable otter wizard. It is 1 and a red for a 2/2. It has Offspring for 2 generic mana, and it says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is also an uncommon, importantly, and this could be the best body that we've seen on this effect at Peasant. Like, in those kind of environments, you have cards like Firebrand Archer and Kessig Flame Breather. They don't have as good a stats as this. Like, 1 is a 2/1, 1 is a 1/3. I like 2/2 a bit more there, if I'm honest with you. And like those, it's dealing 1 damage whenever you cast a non-creature spell. If you then pay 4 mana, you're starting to deal 2 damage with each non-creature spell, and that is pretty solid. The issue with kind of that aspect is that 3 mana at Peasant, you already have Gutter Snipe, and that's a 3 mana 2/2 that deals 2 damage when you cast instant sorceries. So that is a little bit different. That this will trigger off of artifacts, for example, but most of the time in the decks running these cards, it's effectively the same line of text. Like you're generally getting them off of instant or sorceries. If you want one of these effects in your cube, if I'm honest, like at Peasant, I think you're probably still running Gutter Snipe over this. But if you want multiple, maybe if you're in a bigger cube and you're really trying to support that kind of spell slinger style of deck, then this would probably be the next one down on my list. I think I like it more than Firebrand Archer and Kessig Flame Breather, because it has the option of being a 2-drop or a 4-drop, basically. And like it's because it's just 1 red pip, it's like, yes, it's splashable, but this is going in an Izzet deck and nothing else, really, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I may say I've learned that coruscation can mean either a gleam or flash of light, or a sudden or striking display of brilliance or wit.
Oh!
Yeah. So it's a brilliant and witty otter. I'd pretty much agree with all that. I think it might be a little bit better than Gutter Snipe, but I do think Gutter Snipe sucks, is the proviso for that. But
Okay, fair.
just because this can be a 2 mana 2/2 or 4 mana for 2 bodies, right? But yeah, I do kind of think Gutter Snipe sucks, just because it's like so fragile and it's a win con, and I don't know, it doesn't affect the board enough, whereas this at least can be a 2 mana 2/2. But yeah, I'm kind of not a huge believer in this, but yeah, if you're really pushing that spell slinger thing, then maybe you learn both.
Yeah. Like at Peasant, like I'm looking at a few Peasant cubes, kind of like a few of the more popular ones, and they are running like Gutter Snipe and Young Pyromancer. You would assume entirely for that. Yeah, they're running Sprite Dragon. Like this is all purely for that Izzet spells deck, and this is again where this like in this set again. Like a lot of these kind of red and blue and Izzet cards we're going to come to are revolving around like the traditional is it deck, and kind of they're all solid role players in those.
Yeah, for sure.
Talking of an is it card, James, we have another mono red card that's mainly for an is it deck. Do you want to take it away with Emberheart Challenger?
Sure. So Emberheart Challenger is 1 red for a 2/2 creature mouse warrior. It has haste and prowess, at which point I'm kind of already in, honestly. It also has a Valiant ability. So this is the first time we've seen Valiant. It's pretty similar to Heroic, but with the difference that it can trigger off abilities as well as spells, but it only triggers once each turn. So the Valiant ability here is whenever Emberheart Challenger becomes a target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, you may exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. I think this is kind of just a pretty strong red aggressive beta, actually. Like 2 mana, 2/2 prowess haste. I'm kind of interested already, you know. I think if you have, say, 3 to 4 ways of targeting this in your deck, then it becomes, I think, comparable to something like Robber of the Rich.
Okay.
Because, you know, that prowess is pretty strong, right? Like, even if you're not a prowess deck, you still just, like, have some lightning bolts and stuff. I'm kind of in most of the red burn spell decks, honestly. And then maybe you try and get a piece or two of equipment in there to target this and get your Valiant trigger. Because if you trigger that once, it's pretty good, you know? Yeah, I kind of just don't think you're paying that much to put this card in your deck. 2/2 haste prowess, because it's got the thing of, like, you know, you get in for 2 the turn you play it, the next turn you're attacking, they're like, oh, can I really block it with my 2/2? Probably not. I don't know, 2 mana hasty guys, I like them.
I agree with that. I do like this card. I think my issue is that if this card had been printed more than 6 months ago, I would be quite a bit higher on it. It's just literally in the last 6 months, we've had Slick Shot Show Off printed from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. That's a same mana cost for a flying haste, and yes, it's a 1/2, but it also has plot, so you can spend it, so you can do it over multiple turns, and also it gives it +2/+0, which is just a better aggressive body. And then the set before that, we had Fugitive Codebreaker from Karlov Mana, which is a 2/1 prowess haste, but it has disguise, and when it's flipped up, you can discard your hand to draw 3. And I think this is probably a better aggressive body than that, but this thing is, but the Fugitive Codebreaker, I think, is better at giving you a bit of card advantage that I think this is trying to do. For me, I think this kind of, like, so for those reasons, I think this is tricky in, like, the higher power level ones, because, like, if I'm honest, like, even like Slate Shot Show Off, which I think is a very good aggressive magic card, isn't really seeing much play in, like, high powered level cubes right now. For me, this is kind of like a perfect card if you're doing that kind of Feather the Redeem kind of combat tricks matters style of deck, where kind of you're moving combat tricks around from, like, your hand to the stack to the graveyard back again and getting multiple things out of them. If you're doing that kind of deck, then I like this more than Codebreaker, definitely. I like this card. I'm high on it. I just think the issue is just there's been just a couple very recently that kind of, I think, do this better, if I'm honest with you, or in a way that I like more personally.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I guess I see those two as requiring a little bit more work.
That's fair.
Because they're a bit more about actually getting the prowess trigger.
That's fair. I'm seeing them more in I'll say it again, the is it deck. Whereas, like, this is just like, as you said, this with just a lightning bolt killing one of your opponent's creatures is probably still quite good. Yeah.
Yes, I see this much more as a mono red card. Although I will say that I think in, like, Vintagey Cube, red has become a bit less about like Goblin Guide, 2-power haster, burn you out, and more about I've got Fable of Mirror Breaker and Gut and Lelia and all these busted 3-drops, you know? So maybe this doesn't have as natural a home as it might have done at one point.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I guess this doesn't make you like a treasure to sack to a Gut or a Bombardier or something like that.
Yeah. Come on, Wizards. It needs like 5 more lines of text on it. What are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, come on, just keyword Valiant so we can add some more abilities to it. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there was room for reminder text on prowess. That means you could have added more text.
Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Nice.
For real.
All right. Moving on now. Next up, we have our last red card of the day. Next up, we have Hired Claw. This is a single red for a 1/2 creature lizard mercenary. It has whenever you attack with one or more lizards, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent. It also has, you can pay 1 red to put a +1/+1 counter on Hired Claw. Activate only if an opponent lost life this turn. So, I'll be honest, I didn't even look at my cube. This is only going to trigger itself. I can't think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any other lizards that are easily getting into my cube, especially since they errated lizards, dinosaurs to be dinosaurs and not lizards.
Mutavolt's a solid lizard.
Yeah, yes, as always. Yes, good. But effectively, this is 1 mana that kind of effectively attacks as a 2/2 when it's dealing combat damage to your opponent. If they block it, you are guaranteeing that point of damage, which is nice. And also the threat of activation on this is quite high. Like you can play this on turn 1, attack on turn 2, you deal the damage, and then you can activate to put the counter on it at any point during the combat phase. Or actually, I guess for the rest of the turn, but you're probably going to do it in the combat phase if you're going to do it that turn, because you're either going to do it when they blocked, or you're going to do it after damage if you have nothing to play that turn. I think that is good. The issue is, I think I kind of want to be doing more on turn 2 than putting a counter on this card. And just generally, there was a time a while ago where like mana sinks were really, really good, and people used to like, oh, if you have spare mana, you can do this. But like, cards are just good. Like, cards come with other cards come with other effects. You get other advantages. Kind of, you're not really struggling for red mana. And like the main place I can see this being a bit better is kind of like later in a game when you have spare mana. But kind of like if you're a red aggressive deck, you don't really want to be going later in the game because your opponents will just go bigger than you. Like if this didn't say once a turn, if you could just basically make this into like a X spell and just kind of just put all your mana into it, but only if they'd lost damage, I would be much higher on this, because then it's kind of it has use late game as well. But like if you draw this late game, you're just not going to like my issue with this card is they're kind of like, for it to do its thing, you need to play it on turn 1, but then I want to be doing other things with my mana the rest of the game. So we're kind of like, it's not going to get that much bigger. Like this could easily be like a 3/4 by like turn 6, but then you put a lot of mana into it, and then I'd rather play like a 4-drop or a 5-drop at that point, or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's actually, yeah. I'm not super high on this card. I think it's probably a pass for me, if I'm honest.
I think I'm a little bit higher on it than you. Basically, I think this ability is best if you never have to activate it. Because
okay, yeah.
I think the thing where I see this creature playing right is you play it on turn 1, you attack into their creature, you get the damage in from the trigger. They're not going to block it unless they can profitably block a 2/3. So they don't block because they're not just going to punt away their 2/2 and let you activate this and eat it. And then you just get in for your damage. So you got in for 2 points total, 1 off trigger, 1 from combat. And then you play your 2-mana creature post-combat, right?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the ultimate threat of activation ability.
Yeah, exactly.
Having said that, I don't think it's great or anything. I think it's pretty medium. But like if you're in for just red 1-drop creatures that attack for 2 damage on turn 2, then I think this is a totally serviceable one.
But maybe I am judging it a bit harshly, but kind of, if there's more than one other lizard in my cube, I will be higher on this. Let's have a quick look. How many do you think? Are you on 0, James, or?
I would assume 0.
The one lizard in my cube is Iridescent Vine Lasher from this set, because I already added it.
Sure.
Okay. But that does have Offspring, so that counts as 2. Okay, good.
Does it?
Does it? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Okay, all right. Let's move hastily on. Do you want to take it away with our first green card? And Jesus, this is a big lad.
Oh yeah, I was looking for the wrong green card. Yes, it is. I agree. So first up in green, we have Gale Wind Moose. This is 4 green for a 6/6 creature elemental elk. Kind of feel like it should be elemental moose. I know they're the same thing.
Yeah,
but,
actually, yeah. I'm now annoyed by this card.
Yeah. But anyway, 6 mana 6/6 elk. It has flash, vigilance, reach, and trample, and it's an uncommon. This seems like solid top end in Peasant Cube, I would say. Colossal Dreadmore has finally been outmoded, I think. Especially, I think blue-green is maybe its best home, right? Get to play some nice blue-green flash action. That seems pretty good. You leave up your counterspell, they don't play into it, and you've got a 6/6. That's pretty good. And you can just ambush their creature, even if it flies. Seems pretty solid.
Yeah. I haven't got too much more that. If I'm not sure if the flash deck exists in Peasant Cube, as I kind of know it, but like Wilderness Wreck is an uncommon, and kind of just like
Mystic Snake, I'm pretty sure is an uncommon.
That's true. Like they could
get him.
Like I don't think you need the flash deck for this to be good because it is just a wall of stats and cool abilities. But but if there is a flash deck that exists, I think this is very, very good. There, kind of like my main question for you, James, with this is how recently would this card have been a rare? I'm kind of going back. Like I'm going to say Amonkhet. I think this would have been a rare in Amonkhet.
Yeah.
Like Jesus, it's just really, really big. Like
sure is. Peasant Cube is not what it used to be, I guess.
Yeah. Very cool card. I'll die to this in limited, I'm assuming. Right, next up, we have Innkeeper's Talent. It is another class. It is 1 and a green for another enchantment class. So it comes in on level 1, which says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. You can pay a single green to bring it up to level 2, which says, permanents you control with counters on them have ward 1. And then you can level up to level 3 for 3 and a green, and it says, if you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of those counters on that permanent or player instead. So I think this is okay. 2 mana for a counter every combat is nice. You do need a creature in play with this, which means you might not end up playing this on curve because I don't want to put a counter on a mana dork that I played on turn 1. I want to be putting this on a creature that can attack. But the fact that kind of level 2 is also kind of appealing. It just mucks up your opponent's mana for their removal spells. Also, oddly, I think this makes your opponent have to pay ward 1 to strip your Dark Depths, which is kind of funny. But I've been messing around with the +1 counters deck recently, and so there's 2 issues with the deck. Firstly, no one's bloody drafting it. Secondly, that deck doesn't want, like in general, cubes don't want too many artifacts and enchantments in your green section. And just for the counters deck, we've recently got Bristly Bill, Arwen Weaver of Hope, and Ornery Tumblewag as creatures that deck kind of wants. And for non-creatures, we have things like Hardened Scales, Ozolith the Shattered Spire, and Court of Garenbrig that I think are probably better. Yes, when you level this up to level 4, you're probably happy with it, but then effectively it's kind of just like a build your own Hardened Scales, and Hardened Scales just comes in and does it and costs a single mana. In more budget or mid-powered cubes, I think it could be a solid role player just because like some of the random Hydras I'm running in my +1 counters deck are randomly expensive. Like I'm running cutout paper proxy of Benevolent Hydra because that card is randomly more than I want to spend on it because I'm testing it. But like if Innkeeper's Talent is quite cheap, I could see it being solid as just like another card for that deck. But yeah, outside of the counters deck, this doesn't. I don't think this will see much play.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. There's just creatures that do this at this point, and the creature can put the counter on itself. It doesn't ask anything else of you.
Yeah,
this is, as you say, unless you have a 1-drop, this is not really a good 2-drop because again, you're not getting the counter until the next turn. Listen, I think it's fine. I think if you put it in and someone was doing the counters thing, they would put this card in their deck and it would be strong. But there are just better options available. And how many of this effect do you need?
I'll be honest, every episode we've done since we talked about Bristly Bill, just I love Bristly Bill.
Yeah, Bristly Bill's sick.
All right, what about our next little trash panda here, James?
Next up, we have Keen-Eyed Curator. This is a green and a green for a 3/3 creature raccoon scout. It says, as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with Keen-Eyed Curator, it gets +4/+4 and has trample. So it can become a 7/7. And you can pay a single generic mana to exile target card from a graveyard. So this is kind of reminiscent of Scavenging Ooze, which is a bit of a cube staple, really. although maybe less so than it used to be. If you can easily cast this on turn 2, I think this is just better than Scavenging Ooze.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off bigger, and it's not that difficult mid in the game to get this up to being a 7/7 trample, which is just huge. Like getting that trample keyword is great. The thing is that Scouse kind of just goes in a whole bunch of mid-range decks with a bunch of colors in, and this obviously asks you to be really pretty heavy green, because you do want to be able to cast this on turn 2 to take advantage of the fact that it's just a pretty overstatted body. And I guess the other thing to say is that Scavenging Ooze, the sort of threat of activation of it growing at instant speed, is a bit easier than this, because that you get one counter at a time. So if you have the 2/2 version that you haven't activated, you just exile it twice, use it twice, get up to a 4/4, and you're there. Whereas because this just goes straight from a 3/3 to a 7/7, it's like it's all on board. You can even get to the 7/7 or you can't, and your opponent can make blocks accordingly. But having said that, yeah, I think if you're heavy green, I think this card's really good. Obviously, with the caveat that often green decks are trying to do, 1 into 3. They're trying to get to more expensive cards. They're not always in for random 2-drop creatures. But I think I play this in basically every heavy green deck. I'm probably not going to cut Scavenging Ooze for it in my cube. I'm pretty sure I still have Scouse in. Just because I think this is going to go in so many fewer decks than Scavenging Ooze. I think green on turn 2 is a bit tough, and I'd rather just have the one that you can put in basically every green deck that wants it. And when you want it, it's good out of the board against graveyard people. And this is if you're in a Sultai control deck, you're still not going to board this in because you still can't cast it, right?
Yeah, completely agree. Kind of most cubes will have spots for kind of some graveyard hate. Kind of like most of them won't run dedicated graveyard hate, like a Rest in Peace or something like that. They're normally on a creature that can also attack or do something. Kind of like the ones I see play. Yeah, we've discussed Scavenging Ooze, but you also have cards like Unlicensed Hearse, which is which is pretty solid, and also Endurance for more kind of high powered level cubes, because it can also be because it. I think it has flash, so it can be at instant speed, and also can be free. Because I think I like those 3 more. They're all either 1 more powerful or 2 easier to cast. I think I like them more than this. Kind of like this, I see more as if you are effectively doing I'm going to say mono green aggro here, James, which I know is not a thing that we normally talk about. It's something I'll talk about in a moment with our next card, but that's kind of the only real place I see this getting in over those, specifically when you want this as a 2-mana 3/3, and then the other ability is upside, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're trying to do the green stompy thing, maybe you're running Steel Leaf Champion, Pelt Collector, all that stuff, then you do just want oversized beaters at every point in the curve, and this definitely does that whilst doing incidental graveyard hate, which is great and threatening to become huge later in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. Let's talk about a aggressive green card. Let's talk about Paw Patch Recruit. This is a single green for a 2/1 creature rabbit warrior. It has Offspring for 2 generic, and it has Trample, along with whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than that creature. So again, this is it's a 1-mana 2/1. This is an aggressive creature that you really only want in an aggressive leaning deck, which isn't normally where you see green. It's not something that green normally does. It's interesting that they're doing it, and I like that. Whenever they give me new options for decks I haven't supported before, I get a little bit excited. This, like Hex Drinker sees play. That card is very good because it can grow. But there are other kind of 1-mana pikers in green that you could look at running if you wanted to do something like this. Some of the ones we haven't mentioned are Kessig Prowler and Ascendant Pack Leader. They're just good aggressive bodies. In that deck, I think this is nice. Kind of I don't think you're offspringing this that much, if I'm honest with you. The ability on this is nice. Kind of it means that if an opponent burns one of your creatures or Doomblades one of your creatures, that kind of stuff, another one will get bigger and in theory could replace it, I guess. It's kind of the idea with this card. a new creature steps up to be recruited. I think the main thing is mono green aggro is not there in high powered level cubes. I could see it being there in lower powered level cubes. Like I could sing it as something that people try, and it does get there in cubes that aren't as tuned. I think this would be an interesting card there, but I think mainly you're paying this as a 1-mana 2/1 with trample, that kind of thing, rather than for any of the other abilities, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. It's nice that it tramples, because if you're pushing green aggro, then there's a decent chance that pump spells are a reasonably big part of that. And the trample obviously plays really nicely with pump spells. But yeah, in general, if you want green for 2/1, then this is a good option. Otherwise, probably not.
Yeah, to agree. I mean, people like rabbits.
Also true. Okay, next up in green, we have Tender Wild Guide. This is 1 green for a 2/2 creature possum druid. It has offspring for 2. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. We have a lot of 2-mana dorks with pretty good upside at this point.
There's basically one in each set now, isn't there?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not a bad one, though. Like, basically any turn you don't tap it for mana, you get to just put a counter on it. That's pretty good. And if you have 4 mana and nothing better to do, then sure, you can make 2 of them. But that's, I think, not really what you're here for. As I think the fact that if you play it on turn 2, then there'll be a couple of times you don't want to use it for mana, and it grows a little bit, and then at least it's kind of relevant in the late game. That's fine. If you draw it late, obviously it's still not good, but you're at least getting 2 bodies. They ignore them, they have potential to grow. But there are probably better options. Like, I think Sylvan Caryatid's phenomenal. The hexproof is just exactly what you want on this sort of dork. Fanatic of Ronus from the last set is really good. Even like Paradise Druid, the hexproof when untapped, this means you always get to use it once. It makes that fixing a lot more reliable. How many 2-mana dorks you want is the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with this card. It's a pretty fine option, but I think in a lot of cubes, they'll just get edged out by the couple of better 2-mana dorks.
Yeah, exactly. Like generally, I am a fan of mana dorks that can become beaters. Like, I was a fan of Armored Scrapgorger. That's 2 mana for an 0/3 that taps to add a color of mana. And when it becomes tapped, exile a card from a graveyard. And when it's been tapped 3 times, it becomes a 3/3. And I'm also a fan of dorks that can put counters on things. I'm a fan of Biophagus that kind of taps for a mana of any color. And if it's for a creature, you put a counter on it. The thing with both of those is they do the counter thing, or they make the threat while also making you mana. And this is either or. And I think that's kind of like, you can't do both on the same turn, and that's kind of the main drawback for this guy. Like the one place I could see this, because we're at a point with mana dorks, especially at 2 mana, which is similar to like lightning bolts and shocker base. Basically, you can customize them now to match what your cube is doing, and there is a point where the one place I think this is better than other mana dorks is if you're doing like an opposition style of deck, because this is this is 2 bodies, and those decks just want mana dorks, and they want things that produce multiple bodies, and that's kind of the main place I could see. It's kind of like, but being honest, opposition I think has fallen out of favor in more high power level cubes a while ago. It was probably hanging on a bit longer than it should have been, but opposition is a very cool archetype for like more budget cubes, because opposition is really cheap and it is a powerful, unique effect you don't get that often, and that's maybe where I think I see this possum seeing play.
I still have opposition in my powered cube. No one can stop me. Everyone is wrong.
Can I ask you a serious question? Have you ever seen a possum?
No.
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 Like,
I think they're an American.
They are. Yeah.
I don't think they exist in Europe.
They do not know. Yeah, that's kind of why I was like, because I don't think I've even seen one at a zoo or anything like that.
I mean, they look like a pretty underwhelming zoo animal, to be honest.
Like,
if I went to a zoo and I was like, yeah, here's the possum. It's just like, yeah, right.
Nice. Yeah. From looking, it's very much just Central and Eastern America. But yeah, okay, cool, nice, love that. All right, we have our last green card of the day. Next up, we have Rootcast Apprenticeship. This is 3 and a green for a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Weirdly, this doesn't have the bean spore things on it, despite the fact it definitely could have the bean spore things on it, but never mind. Your choices are: put 2+1 counters on target creature, create a token that's a copy of target token you control, target player creates a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. So it's a modal card. Obviously, it's flexible. I mean, I am kind of here for 4 mana, put 6 counters onto a creature in your big green deck. Like, that's actually kind of good. Obviously, if it gets bolted or if it gets killed in response, then it kind of sucks. But then effectively, you cast an aura at that point, and they were probably going to kill it anyway. So the middle ability is a bit like, the first time I read that, I didn't realize it was create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Because then my notes were make 3 bloated contaminators or 3 Sentinel of the Nameless Cities. The fact you already have to have a token means I am a little bit lower on this. There will be a token deck in green, but kind of like generally those decks are making like smaller tokens. Like they're making 1/1 squirrels. They're making like 0/1s. They're not making like 3/3s or kind of like cool tokens. Although I guess there is like the golem. It was like a sand splice or something like that. It made a 3/3 golem.
Sandstorm Salvager.
Yeah, like if you can get 3 copies of that off this, then I quite like it. But that isn't your most common use case for this. Yeah, I think you're generally here for putting the counters on multiple creatures. Like, yeah, that effect is quite strong, especially if you have hardened scales. That gets a bit more interesting with this kind of thing. Just put a load of counters on your creatures. I'm assuming this might oddly get better in Powered Cube, James, where you have where there's more powerful artifacts running around, like where you can answer Moxen and Soul Ring with this. Fine card. I haven't got too much more to say about it, I guess.
That's fair. Yeah, I think things in Powered Cube, like, by the time you're casting your 4-drop, their Mox solving things have done a lot of their work, right? Honestly, yeah, the most powerful mode at base level looks like just put tons of counters on a creature and kill them. Because, make for a copy of a token, like, that'll come up. If you have a couple of ways to make, like, decent tokens in your deck, then that'll be nice. You've got, like, a random Garruk that spits out wolves or whatever. Or beasts, maybe, I can't remember. Making the 1/1's just pretty underwhelming. Like, you don't want to spend 4 mana to make 3 1/1s in most cubes. But yeah, maybe getting the artifacts, I guess, is really good when it comes up, but a bunch of the matchups won't be good. I think this is just a little bit underwhelming. It seems like, the most powerful mode is putting a bunch of counters on a creature, and this is just quite a lot of mana to spend on a big aura and then get blown out,
Yeah, I was just going through mine and kind of just trying to look at what tokens I wouldn't mind copying. And like 3 constructs off of like an Urza Saga is quite vibey, but those decks aren't often in green, I think, is the issue with that. But
yeah.
But no, fair enough. Yeah. Rootcast Apprenticeship maybe not one for us. What do you think of our next card, James? This is a multicolored card. Oh, this is our first multicolored card of the day.
Yeah, this one's. I think you're maybe higher on this than me.
I am. Do you want me to take it actually? Because I have some nice things to say about this card. So,
okay, nice. I want to talk about the next one.
Okay,
that's good.
Right. So first up in multicolored, we have Gev Scaled Scorch. This is a black and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature lizard mercenary. It has ward, pay 2 life. It has other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. And whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev Scald deals 1 damage to target opponent. So as we mentioned previously, just ignore the bottom line of text there. This we're not here for that. So 2 mana for a 3/2 we do like in Rakdos. It is an aggressive color. The decks tend to be aggressive. Putting counters on your creatures you play post combat is nice, although a lot of them will have haste, which is a little bit annoying because you won't be able to get the counters on them the turn they attack if you're hasting them in. But your other threats, you can put the counters on after you've dealt damage with this, and 3/2 will get through for damage, as well as a lot of other cards in the deck. Why I'm actually interested in this card, and why I'm pretty positive on it, is that this is infinite with a Sack Outlet and Murderous Redcap. Murderous Redcap is a 2/2 goblin with Persist that deals damage equal to its power to any target when it comes in, and it has Persist. So if you have this and your Sack Outlet in play, You cast the red cap, you ping your opponent for 2, you then sack it. Your opponent has taken damage, so when it comes back in with a -1/-1 counter on it with persist, Gev puts a +1 counter on it, which ends up meaning it resets everything and has no counters on it, meaning that you can effectively do that infinitely. This is an effect that a lot of cubes already have. Like I already have this combo in my cube, and one of the main issues with it is that black gives you sack outlets, as does red a little bit, but you normally have to go into green and white for the other parts of the combos, the parts that negate the -1/-1 counters being put on. This also being a Rakdos card, fitting in with your sack outlets and your murderous red cap and some of your other persist creatures, just makes the mana of that deck a little bit easier. And it means that something in like a lower powered or more mid power type of cubes, they can support this easier, meaning you don't need like perfect Jund mana or perfect 4-color mana to support this. You can just be a Rakdos deck and have this combo in there. And I think that is one of the reasons I like this card, basically. Kind of like outside of that, I'm not high on it, but kind of like in that kind of, I quite like it because also importantly, it will like, so that combo will work with another persist creature if you also have a Blood Artist in play, because they'll get drained when the creature dies as well. And that's kind of, it all kind of fits quite nicely in that package. And that's kind of why I'm here for it.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that actually. That's cool. I think getting those enablers in red and black is nice. It even works right if you, even without the Blood Artist, if you have just any other persist creature, but your sack outlet is like a Goblin Bombardment, say, that's dealing damage. Or even if none of it deals damage, but you just got in for 1 with a creature earlier in the turn. You know, you just have to deal damage once, and this card is on for the persist combo for the rest of the turn. Yeah, this seems really cool. Like, I think I would put this in if I was doing persist combos. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm probably going to test this in mind specifically for that, because like, yeah, I know I've tried like Good Fortune Unicorn in Cube to try and support this before, and that's a green-white card, and the other combo bits are like red-black, and that's just very tricky on your mana. Yeah. I'm kind of here for this.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense. Moving on for our second Rakdos card of the day, we have the infamous Cruel Claw. This is 1, a black and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature Weasel Mercenary. It has Menace, and whenever the infamous Cruel Claw deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. This card seems powerful.
Yeah, I like this one too.
Casting cards without paying their mana costs, historically a very strong thing to do in Magic. I will say that it's a 3-mana creature. You need to untap with it and get through the damage. So I wouldn't be relying on this. It's not like, you know, a Flash or a Reanimator or a Stick Attack where you're just going to get to cheat a big thing into play reliably. I would more view this as a solid 3-drop with a really powerful hit trigger, and you don't have to be hitting the world every time for this to be good. Just getting to play a 3 or a 4-drop without paying its mana cost, because you got to do something else that turn as well, is really strong. It's also great that you get to see the card before you decide whether you discard. That makes this so much better, because otherwise you'd be in the scenario of like, I discard my card, but then I hit like a Thoughtseize and you have no cards in your hand, or I hit a removal spell without good targets. Whereas it kind of feels here like if you can just get this through, then you'll have a really good chance of getting a lot of good value. And even if you miss, yeah, it's kind of okay. Your guy's still there. Hopefully you get to do it again next turn. You don't have to shoot giant things into play, but if you're, Rakdos does do Reanimator pretty well, and often, though, Rakdos Reanimator stuff is like, I have a solid beatdown plan and some reanimation spells, and if you're in that space, then obviously you have outs to hit something big, and that's nice. Plus, if you're playing like Vamp and stuff, then it gets really good, because you can just... You can even like put the trigger on the stack, so you know you're getting your trigger. They can't kill your guy. Then in response, vamp for my reanimation target and do it that way, and that's pretty nice. But yeah, I mostly just see this as like a strong mid-rangey beater with a powerful trigger when it hits them.
No, definitely, yeah. I'm a big fan of the kind of Rakdos aggressive, like kind of mid-rangey beatdown deck that has the ability to reanimate something big. Like it doesn't have to be a Grizzlebrand; it can be like a Chaos Defiler or something like that. But like, yeah, the fact that in this, it's kind of like, yeah, you can get through for damage and then randomly flip your Grizzlebrand and cast it for free. Or if you have your reanimation thing in your hand, you could flip your reanimation spell. This lets you put it into the graveyard and then you cast a reanimation spell for free and bring it back into play. The end result is the same. You have a big thing. The other thing I also kind of like this in, like, I think I like this in the Madness deck, and that's primarily because the Madness deck has to run a lot of bad cards to make it work, and I don't think this is a bad card. Like, the base level for this is a 3-mana 3/3 with Menace that when it connects lets you cast stuff for free. Like, that is a very good base level, and like, I think I like that more than like a lot of, or than some of the Madness cards I have tried to run in the past, basically. Like, I think this is a pretty solid base level to start with.
I feel like you're throwing aspersions on Wild Mongrel here.
I love Wild Mongrel. I built a pauper deck around it, but I'm willing to admit I shouldn't have been running it in my cube, in my relatively powerful cube, up until like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
It wasn't just Wild Mongrel, James. It was Winding Constrictor as well. Let's not beat around the bush here. We ran them both. It didn't get there.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure they were in the cube. I didn't see them on the battlefield very much.
Yeah. That's because that was when you were winning a load of cubes and I was playing a load of Wild Mongrels in the O2 bracket, James. Thank you. Please and thank you.
I respect her commitment.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself, and that's what matters.
That's true.
All right, let's move on to an Izzet card. Next up, we have Ral Crackling Wit. This is the Planeswalker of the set. It is 2, a blue and a red for a 4 starting loyalty legendary Planeswalker Ral. There's a static ability of whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a loyalty counter on Ral Crackling Wit. There's a +1 of create a 1/1 blue and red auto creature token with prowess. There's a -3 of draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. And a -10 of draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with instant and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. So as we mentioned earlier, making prowess creatures is a good base level. Obviously, this comes in, it can protect itself with those little otter friends. This is an Izzet card, and again, we mentioned it a bunch in this episode. This goes into the Izzet deck. You need to be casting a lot of instant and sorcery spells to be happy with this. That's probably the only way that I'm going to be running this card if I'm really supporting that strategy and like I'm going like really deep on it. Like I don't know if you know what is it something like keeping an Izzet Mage busy? It's like a playtest card that kind of like it's a hybrid blue-red for an instant that just says return this spell to your hand. So you can just play it for as much mana you have. Like that's where we're going with this. Like you really need to be running all the ops and all the things to do this. The ultimate for this deck is fun. If you're doing Ritual Storm in your cube, but you're not going like super high power level with it, like if you're not going for like Yorgmoth's Will and Tendrils Win, this is a cute win con. Like do this and the last card is Lightning Bolt. Cool, that will be fun. Probably for lower or mid power level cubes, this one could be interesting. Yeah, again, if they're trying to do Storm, but outside of that, it's just tricky. Kind of like I just don't think this is going to get there in a lot of cubes. There is a lot of kind of Izzet payoffs for this kind of deck, and I don't think this is a super strong one.
Some questions about this card. Is Val an otter now?
Oh,
because it looks like the Planeswalker is the otter, not the.
Yeah. No, it is. No, I think
Val didn't used to be an otter. Has he become an otter?
No, I think it's something that happens when you go to Bloomburrow.
Ah, I see.
I believe. I'm open to being very wrong on that because I'm open to being very wrong on that because I haven't really read too much of the lore. But I believe that's what happens. Like when you go to the plane, you turn into a fursona, I guess, for lack of the better words there.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Okay, I like that. Onto the actual text of the card. Kind of the issue I have is that it's a 4-mana walker that doesn't really defend itself very well the turn you play it. So you're probably not casting more spells the turn you play your walker a lot of the time. At which point you're just like playing it and plussing and making a 1/1. Seems very killable. But if you do get to untap with this and a decent chunk of loyalty, it seems powerful. Because, if you do have that density of just cheap spells, ideally spells that draw you cards, because that lets you keep casting spells. The how to keep Izzet Mage busy is actually a great shout. I think if you're like, obviously a bunch of people won't want to put test cards in their cube and whatever, because they're not real cards. But if you're open to that, I think that's a really fun one that would be pretty interesting in some cubes. But yeah, I think if you can untap with this and you just have a bunch of cheap spells, like, it seems kind of powerful, because you can maybe get into the spot where you're just using the -3 over and over again and drawing enough cards and playing enough spells that you're not running out of stuff to do, and you're plussing it enough from the static each time that you're just going to get to keep using the -3. The -10, I don't think is really about Storm. I'm just not a believer in like ultimating my Planeswalker as a part of my Storm game plan, because it's just a lot of mana to put in to do it all in the same turn, and your Storm deck isn't generally going to be great at keeping Planeswalkers alive. But I think if you get from -10 and you're just like, draw 3 cards, play Lightning Bolt with Storm, you can probably win the game from there, I think it's like, could be a role player in like a mid-power level cube if you're really pushing like, I just have a ton of cheap instants and sorcerers. It's kind of a different direction to go with that, right, than the cheap prowess creature direction.
Exactly.
You can go more in the like, trigger my slightly more expensive things and get inevitability direction.
Yeah. The other thing with like, so just trying to do the math on this, kind of like, this actually feels like it wants to be with those card draw cards, but also with like ones that have like flashback and jumpstart, basically ways that you can cast the spells like twice. Because there is a world where you don't have enough instants and sorceries in your deck to really get there with this. Like you need to be casting your spells twice from the graveyard, and that's something to consider if you're thinking of putting this in. Like this with like deep analysis is where we're going with this, maybe, rather than just like a straight opt.
For sure, I will say I don't particularly believe in the mode of use this, make some prowess tokens and try and kill people with them, just because generally if you're trying to lean into the aggressive prowess stuff, what you want to be doing is playing creatures with prowess and prowess adjacent abilities early, and then later in the game you're just playing the non-creature spells to trigger them.
Yeah, you have like one turn where you try and kill them with the prowess creatures we mentioned, and like a Kiln Fiend or something like that. A Nivik
exactly.
Cyclops, James.
Oof. Love that.
Nice. All right, but we're not done with Izzet yet, James. We have another Izzet card. You want to take it away with another little otter friend?
We sure do. So next up we have Stormcatch Mentor. This is a blue and a red for a 1/1 creature otter wizard with haste and prowess. And it has instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is cool. So it's like a aggressively slanted Goblin Electromancer. I guess this is pretty good if you're just like after a threat with prowess that and you have a bunch of like 2 CMC cards to enable that, then this turns them into 1 CMC cards to enable it, and all of a sudden they're all pretty good. Like your think twice, your radical ideas kind of spring to mind a little bit. I guess kind of the issue I'd have with for that aggressive prowessy deck, if you get it to work, often you will really want as many 1 mana instants and sorceries as possible to enable it, and this obviously doesn't help with them.
Yeah.
And at that point, there are a bunch of pretty good 2 mana threats for that deck. And this is maybe just not quite as aggressively slanted. You come by this like a Sprite Dragon, for example. Like that card just kills them really quickly in a way that this doesn't quite. But it's certainly not a bad card, and it is kind of just better than a Goblin Electromancer most of the time, right?
I think so. Like Goblin Electromancer might as well be a wall for the amount of attacking that card does.
Yeah.
People do not. Yeah, they don't risk that card in combat. Whereas this, I feel, this can rumble.
Yeah. I guess like the only downside being like if it gets picked off by a Orcish Bowmasters or a Renin 6 or something. But yeah, in general, like, yes, it's gets in more than Goblin Electromancer does, but decks that play Goblin Electromancer most are like Storm decks that don't really care about attacking anyway. Like, even if you cast 7 spells in a turn, you're not killing them in one shot and they can just chump it. And your combo deck doesn't necessarily care about getting in for smaller amounts of damage, right? So it's like, yes, it's an upgrade, but is it that much of a meaningful upgrade if what you're trying to do is storm off?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's I think kind of like the TLDR for me on this card is like if you were like Goblin Electromancer does see play in Peasant Cube, and if you're running that, I would personally swap this out because I think this is just a strict upgrade. Yeah, in higher power level cubes, like we saw a recent Baral recently. No, sorry, we saw the Ral Zarek from Modern Horizons 3 effectively does this, and we have Baral as well. I think those are both better than this. Yeah. If you want the reduction for Storm, basically.
Yes, I would agree. Ral in his pre-Otter form.
No, exactly. There have been a lot of very adorable cards in this set, but the last up today, we have Yigra, Eater of All. It is 3 a black and a green for a 6/6 legendary creature elemental cat. It has Ward, Sacrifice of Food, and other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have pay 2 generic, tap, sacrifice this permanent, you gain 3 life. And whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2+1 counters on Yigra, Eater of All. So, why is the cat the big bad of the set? That's just outrageous. So, the main important thing with this card that I think is very interesting is that it's not creatures you control. It's all creatures on the battlefield, including your opponents, are food. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'm not sure if this is a build around. Like, I don't know if this goes in the food deck, James. Like, the food deck does tend to be like Abzani colors. So there is a world where you do this, but is this just not just a big beta that's kind of hard to deal with, and you have some artifact synergies in the part where I'm struggling is kind of Golgari isn't the artifact synergy color regularly. Maybe you are doing it with like Marionette Apprentice, the cards that drain when artifacts go to the graveyard, that kind of thing. Maybe that's kind of where this deck wants to be, but yeah, as it is, kind of like there isn't really a place for this, but I'm intrigued by this card, and I think this card's cool and interesting. I haven't worked out what I'm doing with it yet.
Yeah, got some potential in the food deck. Just because it makes all your sacrifice a food stuff trigger off sacrificing any creature. So, for example, like, even just stuff like your Tireless Tracker gets bigger if you sack a creature or whatever. But there is, I think, you can go a bit deeper than that. There is some combo potential here. Like,
is that? Let's go. Okay.
Cards Experimental Confectioneer, which I think has some other interesting combos with it as well, actually. But Experimental Confectioneer is 2 and a black for 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you make a food. Whenever you sacrifice a food, you get a 1/1 black rat. So if you have that and Yigra, then you sack a food, you get a rat, but the rats are also food. So if you just have a way to sack outlet for your creatures, it self-fuels and you can go infinite. So say the sack outlet is a Goblin Bombardment, you can just Goblin Bombardment them out from there. Which seems kind of interesting. And Confectioneer has some other combo stuff with like Peregrine Took. I kind of think if you just mash all these food cards in a deck, they'll come out with something interesting, you know? Yeah.
No, nice. Okay.
And like maybe there's just like enough overlap between all of these little slightly janky combos where you put them all together and something exciting happens, you know?
No, that's cool. Yeah. As you kind of mentioned earlier, they keep printing food cards, and I am kind of here for that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, as we kind of mentioned at the start, we have ideas for some future episodes, and one of them might be us building the food deck. That could be quite cool.
Yeah. I feel like it's a bit of a hard one just chucking, because I think it's I don't think it's a small package. I think it's like
a lot of cards.
You add 40 cards type thing, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it could do some pretty cool stuff.
No, definitely. But like in a cube that's already supporting artifacts, I think it's definitely doable. But yeah. Again, I think that is a conversation for another time. And that is where we are going to leave it for today. Please remember to follow the podcast and give us a 5-star review. Tell a friend, all that good stuff greatly helps us out. James, pleasure as always. Thank you very much for today. Yeah, a lot of cool and interesting cards from possibly the most adorable set we've seen in a hot minute.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, always a pleasure.
Fantastic. If there's any cards that we missed, do let us know on Twitter at PowerfulMTG. Again, we will definitely post there at some point in the future. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know down in the comments as well. But just leave me to thank you all very much for listening. It's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from James, and until next time, we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.